Here we go again. It's Reclaiming America. We're into September now, and we want to wish you all a happy fall.
Happy fall. Fall is upon us.
And we, for some of you have been back to school for a month. Others are just going back to school now. But we wish you a great run, and we're here to keep filling you in on all the things you need to know, and we're afraid to ask.
Are you enjoying your pumpkin spice everything?
I am actually becoming a pumpkin, and don't go there.
You're dressed for it.
I just knew when that rolled out, I was going to pay for
I
that.
actually like that shirt. So do you drink a lot of pumpkin spice things and eat?
Absolutely not.
Are you anti-pumpkin spice or pro-pumpkin spice?
I'm anti.
I'm pro.
That figures.
Yeah. No, I actually am. I actually have pumpkin spice year round.
And what does this have to do about today's topic? I just thought it
Absolutely nothing, but
I just want to see, we're going to humanize the show here.
Casual conversation, let them see who we are as people.
Okay.
A little pumpkin spice coffee.
Well, no, we need
muffins.
to talk about Dunkin' Donuts versus Starbucks or things like that.
Oh, that's going to be a fight, my friend.
Why? Which one are you for?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, then there's no fight. We absolutely agree.
See, forget it then. That doesn't make for a good show.
Well, then you could switch sides and tell them the truth.
I've had Starbucks once in my life.
Yeah, me too, and that's the last time I've been there.
Now, you ever have Death Wish coffee?
No, I haven't had that.
So they are from upstate New York. Shout out to them as a company, but their coffee makes Starbucks look weak. It's called Death Wish for a reason.
Had a good military cup of coffee?
You know what? The military would love that coffee.
There's an old saying that if the spoon does not stand up in the cup, it's really not strong
Yeah,
enough.
this will be a fun story. You probably will get this one. So my ex-father-in-law was in the Navy. He was in Boomers.
He was in Bloomers in the Navy?
Boomers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And he was the Master Chief of the mess. So he was the chef. And he said there was a hard and fast rule. You never clean the coffee pot. Ever. No. And apparently some Yahoo came in, first tour on the boat, and decided to clean the pot. They almost had a riot on their hands.
Is he still on the ship, or is he underneath it somewhere?
This was 20-odd years ago, but he was telling me the story, and I went, really? You never cleaned? Because I was a young little lad then, 20 whatever. He's like...
This was back when the U.S. Constitution was
He's like,
sailing.
that ship was 20 years old, and I would have ventured that sub had never had its coffee pot cleaned ever. Did the Army do the same thing?
No, we cleaned our pots every. First of all, most of us were in the field, so the pots had to be cleaned as we moved from place to place.
Well, if you're under the ocean, you kind of say you're in the field.
No, you're under the field, maybe. You're under.
They also ate really good, by the way. He was telling me all about that. But anyway, I digress. All right, what are we talking about today? Pumpkin spice, coffee.
Yeah, all those ones. I think we should do some history discussion of the political parties in our country.
I think this would be a very entertaining show for some people.
We can start out with back when the country was born, we had the Democratic Republican Party.
Okay, so when you were sitting with the founders, go ahead.
I was actually their advisor, being one of the
older people. Well, there were actually more than one party back then.
There was the Whig Party.
There was the Whig Party.
Right. And that was a member that you were a member of that group, because you just couldn't pay not to be there, and
go on.
So I thought I'd leave that one there for you. So hairy situation that it would be. Again, I'm going to give you credit for that because God did make only so many perfect heads. The rest He covered with hair, and so we're going to move on from that one. Anyway, back to political discussion.
We're 10 minutes in. We
haven't said 5 words about political parties.
All right, let's talk about
political
parties. So,
political parties tend to evolve, and
a little bit.
And what's fascinating is if you historically go back and look at today's Republican Party and today's Democratic Party, and go back 100 years or so, they were on exact opposite sides of the polls.
Of the polls?
Polar opposites.
Thank you.
Okay.
Opposite
I was
polls.
like, wait a minute. What? Wait, you lost
We're going
me.
back to those 10,000 people on the polls.
Okay. Got
the polar opposites. Thank you for the word I'm working for.
All right, we're going there. Go ahead.
Okay.
And how were they different, Bill?
Well, if you go back in the 1930s, the unions were members of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. They were considered to be the party of the working men, of the working people. The Republicans tend to be the party of the elite or the rich or whatever else, and the well-to-do. And you come 100 years later, and we've reversed course completely.
Yeah, especially since the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, you think, again, there's different times where things have switched. There's the big switch in the 1960s that I counter actually isn't a switch. it's just perception that it switched.
I'm waiting to hear this.
Well, let's think about it. So, in the 60s, what was the Deep South?
They were democratic like
As
you've
Democratic
never
as
seen.
you could possibly
The Solid
be.
South is what they were called.
Now, who is the Deep South now, with the exception of Georgia?
The solid
About
Republican
as red
base.
as you can go. But it's, again, a lot of it, people are saying, well, it's different. The way I look at it, and I'm just gonna say this, and if we get in trouble, we get in trouble. Is
Don't get me in trouble.
Would you agree that the reputation of the Democratic Party prior to roughly 1964 was not the most favorable towards people of color? Would that be a nice way of putting it?
Yeah, they were racist and cigarettes.
I'm trying to be polite here,
And
you
I am-
blew it. All right. And they had this mindset towards those
And,
people.
you know, if you look at the reality of after the Civil War, I mean, Jim Crow laws came because of Democrats
in the Deep South.
in the Deep South.
Yep.
They were there. That's a reality.
And
What I fault the Republican Party for is after the Civil War, the Republican Party had the freed slaves. They were all Republicans. They were voted solid Republican. They were Republicans elected to office around the South, okay? And then what they did is they decided by the 1890s they could ignore this base.
and there was a
You know, and,
What
and
started
they
that?
did.
Yep.
And the Democratic Party came in and said, look what they're doing to you. They're ignoring you. We can promise you A, B, C, D, and E if you join us. And they did.
and they did enforce. But the point I'm trying to make is that the Democratic Party's view towards people of color, I don't think has changed all that much. They view them as they need help. They can't make it on their own. I mean, if you actually go back and look at Mr. Biden's statements in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Oh, I don't even want to quote him.
You can't. You'll be banned if you quote what our now president said.
Well, let's just start with his comment about when then candidate Obama was running.
Carefully say it.
I'm not sure there's any careful way to say this, but basically he kind of made the statement, look, this is a big deal. We have a well-dressed,
I was gonna say,
well-educated, well-spoken black man running for office.
and that's my point. I don't think, for all the bluster about viewpoints changing in that era regarding that particular issue, I don't think they're any different now than they were then, than they were 100 years ago.
Yeah,
that
but-
said, in general, I agree with you.
Reverse that.
Yeah.
That was said by then candidate or Senator Biden, because he was still running for office at that
Right.
point. Had that been said by a Republican,
I gotta let it go because I don't want to. We
we
don't want to get in trouble.
There's just
How
so much-
sad! How sad that we can't have an honest conversation about it, though. Right?
No, you're right.
But I've had many Democratic friends in my time, and they always said the party switched in 1964 is the when Johnson became president, and made the, and I'm paraphrasing, statement that if we do this, they'll vote for us for the next 50 years.
I believe that was an accurate statement too.
That's
And yet the funny
proven
thing
true,
was,
but now it's starting to go back the other
well,
way.
the funny thing was, if you look at the '64 Civil Rights Act that was passed, it only passed because the Republican people voted for it.
Oh, funny fact that nobody knows, Bill.
Yeah, it's a fact.
It's an absolute fact.
Yeah, that you weren't going to get at that point. The Solid South was not going to vote for it.
Right.
You know, because they were still in Jim Crow, and without the Republicans coming out en masse to vote for the Civil Rights Act, it wouldn't have happened.
And this is the issue, is people don't know that, right? This is why we need to keep history in the schools, even though they're trying to eliminate it or rewrite it, is to have discussions. The reason I will put this right out there, I think one of the reasons they don't want slavery discussed in schools is who looks bad and who looks good when you talk about slavery regarding political parties.
Sure, absolutely. The
If you think
Republicans
that's not part of it?
They were formed to fight slavery in the 1850s.
Yeah, they were.
They became the anti-slavery party, taken over from the Whigs, who had died out, and their whole platform was to eliminate slavery. Which is what, when they finally, I think it was 8 years later, they finally elected Lincoln.
Lincoln came in.
And he became the president. And first thing he did was to try to do something about it. And what happened? We had a civil war. And during the war, what did he do? The Emancipation Proclamation.
The point being, do you know how many, you probably even know better than I do, how many young children, when I say young, I'm talking, let's say 6 to 16, don't know that?
They have no clue.
They
They don't teach it.
No clue.
What they do teach is 1619.
Yeah, funny how they go back to that.
Yeah.
But this is why I think one of the biggest reasons why they're trying to change the curriculum, right, is to. I better not. I was going to say whitewash. That would not have been good. But I said it anyway, so I guess I'm screwed at this point.
And I didn't do it.
They're trying to reframe history.
But you have to understand why. They want to do away with the Constitution because the Constitution is a problem for what they want to do. Now, how do we do that? We have to take the founders and make them all evil. Because if they're evil, then what they wrote is evil, and it needs to be either gotten away or replaced or adjusted.
Yep.
And that's exactly what you're seeing now. There's a move in New York and Jersey to replace the George Washington Bridge name because he was a slave owner.
Yeah, I heard that one.
It's just, but I have a solution for
call
that
it the
they're
Andrew
not going to
Cuomo Bridge.
like.
Okay, go.
We have to play the game the way it's played. If they want to set the rules, we play the rules that way too. So here's how this happens. If it offends people because we're changing military names for generals, if we're changing Thomas Jefferson as an evil person, they're all evil persons that were slave owners, then if something offends me, we need to take it down. Ergo,
Careful.
Malcolm X, Boulevard, and whatever else. That's offensive to me for the way he felt about white people. Ergo, we need to take down his signs, and we need to play the same game we're being dealt.
I'll throw another name out there, and this would be awful if it happened. There are people targeting Martin Luther King Jr. to have his name removed from things. That
Under
would
those
be-
rules, it would if you apply the same
But
rules,
it's
it would have to
the
happen.
left arguing it. It's not the
Really?
right. It's the
That
left.
I haven't heard.
Because they don't like what he said. Extreme. It's out there.
That I have not heard.
It's not popular, but it's out there. I've seen it. That, he... I don't want to use the words they use because, again, we'll get banned. But essentially that... I don't even know how to say it without getting in trouble. That's how bad it is, right?
I'm going to watch you squirm.
Old white guy trying to repeat their words, and I'm going to get slammed for saying it. To put it in words we can get away with, but basically he was not African American enough. I mean, what a ludicrous statement, right?
Unfortunately, that's been labeled to quite a few people.
Exactly. It's when you get to that point, and again, I'm talking extreme. It's not. I'm not trying to label the Democratic Party saying that. I'm talking far left of left wokesters. To throw something like that out is absurd. Judge a person not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. They don't like that.
Of course not.
They want to judge based
again,
on skin color.
To stay in power, they need to put us all in little boxes. We can't be one group because one group is a problem.
Absolutely.
So therefore, you can be black, white, Hispanic. You can be male, female. You can be XYZ, MOUSE, GNY, whatever you want to be. XYZ. Pick a group. There was a survey, by the way. I think we should talk about that survey later about what was going on in. Did we do that the other day or not? The survey on.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Good.
So the answer is I have no idea, Bill.
We'll get to that later.
Okay.
But, there's a new title called Intersex, and I haven't figured out what that is yet. And I thought I kind of knew a lot about this stuff, but there's a new title that's been put. Actually, people can choose that as a gender, or as a.
Careful.
Yeah, I gotta be good. Let me get out of this one. Producer, save me here, producer.
No, I know what you're doing, but I can't. I am not going to repeat it. Go on. You hung yourself here. I'm bailing on you.
But going, and we'll deal with that in another segment just to
Okay.
talk about that.
Maybe.
Let's go back to this.
Mate, get yourself out of this hole.
Go
ahead. You
Let's
dug
go
it
back
deep.
to
Get out.
discussing history.
Yeah, so going back to the political parties. Let's go there. Let's rephrase.
If you look at today's parties, for all practical purposes, the Republicans have become the everyday male or everyday male-female party. The average, the leadership of the unions are still Democratic.
You're not saying it right, but the everyday person,
The everyday peoples.
normal people.
I don't want to do everyday people because there's another
No,
connotation here. But,
no, stop.
I got a look from the producer.
You deserved it.
Okay, but
The average American.
the average
There you
American,
go.
male, female, they become Republicans. On the other side, big business, which used to be a Republican stronghold, if you want, has all become Democratic. You know, the billionaires, for the most part, are Democratic, and they're actually globalists, which have become Democratic, and they've got unlimited funds. You know, and that's been proven election after election, where Republicans can't even match the dollars that are being thrown out against them from the Democratic side. But we still managed to win because right is right, and we are fighting for the everyday person.
Well, I mean, we talk about the switches. You think back in the 70s, the Democratic Party was still considered union.
Yep.
Pro-worker,
Yep.
I guess is the way I would put it. They're the exact opposite of it now. They try not to be. They try and use careful wording with it, but they are all for big business.
Oh,
and you saw it. We can't use the word, but there was this little thing that happened in 2020. Little illness going around.
You guys, we can't say COVID?
I'm trying not to.
Okay, I won't
But,
then.
you know, you look at who was allowed to stay open. Big business. Who was shut down?
The small business.
business, the average American.
The mom and pops were put out of
Who
business.
was doing the shutting down? It wasn't the Republican Party.
Nope.
You know.
And now they're denying it as best you can find.
Oh my God! I was just going to go there. And now they're trying to
It didn't happen.
reframe history. I can't use
It
whitewash.
didn't happen.
You know, having lived through it and had a small business shut down. You know, it's again, my postulate that I would put out there is that nothing has really ever changed with the parties. They've always been who they are. They just reframe it or publish it differently. I still think the Democratic Party is really not much different than the Democratic Party of the 1870s.
Okay. But I will tell you what has become different: labels.
All about labels.
You know, let's talk about the word liberal and what it meant in its
Oh, boy.
purest terms. Years ago, a liberal was someone that fought for the common man and the common people, and we're probably down to 2 minutes, so we may not have
On
to
this
squeeze
segment.
this one in.
Well, we can come back to it.
Okay, but nowadays the Democratic Party has gone beyond liberal. They're leftists. Liberals still believe in. Liberals have actually become more of your libertarians, if anything else.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being the classic example. Right now.
John F.K. JFK would have been there too, and RFK
Actually,
Senior
JFK I think would have been Republican at this point.
probably close to it
think.
because he was close to perfect.
RFK Jr. Libertarian. I agree with you there.
Yeah, but that liberal term, I've stopped using the term liberal to describe the far left. They are communists or leftists.
It's not fair to liberals.
No, it isn't, because a true liberal believes in the rights of the individual and the limits, to a certain extent, with the state's ability to step on them, if you will, or control them.
Well said on that.
Okay. With that, we're going to
Well,
take
we'll
a break now
and go
come
from
back
there
and
on
pick
that
that up.
thought.
So anyway,
Right. Good
Reclaiming America. We'll be back soon.
That was well done. And we're back to Reclaiming America. Like how I did that? We're having an interesting discussion about political parties and just in general, not even
And changing the
particular,
labels that's
how
happened
they've
over the years.
changed their viewpoints and labels and all that. So you brought up an interesting thing before we went to break about the definition of liberals. And, you know, I couldn't agree with you more on that. It's interesting to see, though, how you were talking about the Democratic Party seems to favor the elite, if you will. That's a good way
Perfect
they
example.
would put it, right? Who's their biggest donors right now? Zuckerberg, Soros.
Pick a few.
About every billionaire except Elon at this point.
Bezos,
and
you left out
J.K.
Jeff.
Rowling.
You left Jeff out.
Who?
Bezos.
He's old news. His wife took half of everything, so I don't know how.
He's
rich
only
he is.
down to a half a billionaire.
Yeah, so that's who supports the Democratic Party, the elite, if you will.
And unfortunately, due to technology, due to our advances in communication and in actual transportation, these billionaires are become worldly billionaires rather than nationalism. You know, if you go back to the Republican Party with their nationalism, you go to the Rockefellers and you go to people like that, they were still nationalists. They just liked to make a lot of money, but they were doing it, building railroads and doing
It
other
stayed
things
within the
around
United States
within the
primarily,
country.
right.
Our latest groups are globalists. Their interests are spread all over the world, and they have no loyalty to country. And as a matter of fact, what has to happen for them to get what they want is the United States has to be taken down from its exceptionalism to taken down and join the rest of the world, because as long as we stay exceptional, they can't get the one world, one government, UN that they've been trying to get for literally 50 to 100 years.
Well, I was going to say for millennia, actually, probably. Right?
Well, since the UN was born.
Pretty much. It's interesting. So I have another channel that I run, and I do a live every Wednesday from 4 to 5:30. Right. One of the beautiful things about the internet is it goes out worldwide, and I talk to people. I kept track. The other last one I did, I had people from over 50 different countries.
Really?
Interacting on that live. It was amazing to me, right? Because one of the things I put out to is tell me where you're from, because it fascinates me. But again, it's not, we weren't talking politics per se, but what we kind of get into sometimes is that elite mentality that's out there. They'll talk about it. And we're talking about, I've had people from Romania bring it up, people from Australia bring it up. It's not just you and I that are thinking this, it's worldwide. There are a lot of people that are seeing what's happening, and how the name that keeps getting thrown out in my case is Bill Gates.
Well, Gates is a major
my God,
player.
he is like the one I think that's become the target, because somebody joked about no one knows more about science than never studied it in his life than Bill Gates, because he talks about.
Well, we lost Steve Jobs, so that couldn't be. He's another major player.
You talk about Gates owns I don't know how much farmland now.
He's almost in competition with the Chinese
at this point, and he's anti-meat, he's anti all this stuff, and he pontificates about things, and he knows nothing about them. He's the literal definition of an elitist.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, their goal is to bring the United States down to the level of other countries, and so that we can't stop them from this one world government. They want to make the UN the numero uno along with the World Health Organization.
God help us.
And that's exactly where they're heading. But as long as we stand out as that exceptional country, or as Reagan said, the shining city on the hill, it can't happen. And now the scariest thing is, if God forbid they ever take down this shiny city on the hill,
and they're on the verge of it, if we're being honest.
Where do we go? Where's it to go?
2 words. Canada, duh.
Canada?
Look where they are now. They are becoming, before our eyes, a socialist country.
Mm-hmm. But they're going to be drinking well.
Yeah, because they just got a bunch of new beers.
Side note on that.
70 or 80 million. And I'm like, that's chump change. You lost 400 million in sales. If you're that desperate, we don't want to sidetrack onto that, but anyway.
But we're there.
Well, we're there. But I go to Canada. Used to be on par with us as far as freedom and all that. That domino is falling rapidly. You look at Australia, which most
confiscated the weapons on everybody.
Put people in their homes and arrested them if they left their homes. And I'm not talking just during the pandemic. Took all the weapons away and all that. You're seeing the Western civilization one by one going. We are it right now. Yep. If you want to see where we're going to end up if we don't speak up, Canada.
But what's interesting, and it amazes me that we don't pay attention to what's going on. If you go to Europe now, they're starting to turn back.
Well, this was the point I was going to go to with what I was talking about with talking to people all over the world. There's anger out there at this, and it is turning, I think. What's going to be interesting is we're talking about the global versus just the U.S. It's going to work in reverse also. I think you're going to see people come together from all over the world against the elites.
It's got to happen.
I think it's happening. It's a little kernel right now, but it's going to grow because people are just like...
Well, and the reason you see it is, let's go to that pandemic that we can't talk about named COVID, because we're not allowed to mention that word on the air.
We can say the word, we just can't talk about it.
We were shut down all over the world unless you were an elitist.
And,
you couldn't go anywhere without a mask or leave your home unless you were elitist. You could go to any function you want, take off the mask.
Or doing something the elitists approve of, like protesting.
Oh, that's true too. Right. You could show up at a protest and not have to have a mask, or even you were allowed to gather because we couldn't even do that at one point. Assembly was banned.
You couldn't go on the beach in our area. That would get you arrested, but you could go downtown by the thousands and protest.
And be
At the
closer
exact-
than he and are right now.
At the exact same time.
Yep. But
But it's interesting though, Bill, when you look at it, I think this is going to be, I think in 100 years, they're going to look back at this time frame. One, they're going to think we're nuts, and rightfully so, what's going on. But I think you're going to see this is where the globalists might get their way and it becomes quote unquote one world, but it's not going to be the way they want it. I think you're going to see people start uniting. Because I'm seeing it, again, very small kernels here, but like I said, I had people, what we talk about in my particular show, in this case, we're talking about family law. The United States drives family law for the entire world.
okay.
Right? It does. There's no question of that. But the pushback's coming. And this is where it was they kind of morphed off of that, where you're seeing people like from New Zealand talk about it, and they're like, we hate it. Australia, we hate it. Japan, we hate it, and so on. Where my point with all this is people are communicating. They have an ability to communicate now. That internet, right? It does a lot of good.
Thanks
it
to
does a
Al
lot of bad.
Gore, by the way.
Yeah. I think the elitists are not realizing that they've opened up a can of worms they may not want.
They don't think it'll catch them.
They don't. That's a very good point.
They're above all this fray because they have more money than they'll ever need, and they can buy anything they want anywhere they want. So what the rest of us poor peasants are doing really doesn't matter to them. This sounds very much like a modern version feudal system.
I think it is a modern we're there right now, I think. And I got 2 words for you.
Happy birthday.
4 words.
Okay.
The Romanovs and Marie Antoinette. How'd that work out for them?
I don't know. I'm not losing my head over this discussion. It's not going to go that way.
You know, those who don't learn from history are condemned to repeat it. And I think,
and since we're changing history, they can't learn from it.
exactly. And I'm actually encouraged, is what I'm trying to say. I think, in a very positive way, and it's not going to happen tomorrow or even in 10 years, but in 100 years, I do think you're going to see it will be more of a one world. It's going to be because of things have changed, right?
You know, we are heading toward that Star Trek, if
That's
you will.
exactly where you anticipate me again.
That's because you're so full
Think
of
about all
wisdom.
that's come true from Star Trek already.
Yeah, they have.
We have little devices we can walk around with and talk to each other on. Gee, who knew that would ever happen, you know?
Especially when you go back to what this room used to be. If you filled this room with the computers of the 50s, you can now have it all in here, and it's stronger.
You know, you look at, you pulled lots of things from Star Trek that are, or the Jetsons for that matter, that are now true. But I think you're going to see it come down. United States will be here, I think. I think the political parties will still be here. But things are going to change.
You know what I think you're heading toward right now? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go to a book, 1984. The 3 countries that are left to run the world. You have the Americas, for want of a better term, the Europe group, and the Asian group. And if you know the story, they take turns working with each other.
Yep.
And there are several points around the world which are disputed territories that they're fighting in, like the Middle East, surprise.
Yep.
Central America and South, surprise.
Taiwan
over there, all those places,
Korea.
surprise. And the best part of it is, once they switch sides, they go back and change all the records to prove that they never switched sides. Does that sound familiar? Have you heard that before?
It was supposed to be a work of fiction and now a blueprint.
But
But
if you haven't read,
you
you
kind
have
of go
to
back to our political parties. Looking at, say, Canada, UK, Australia, the Western countries, the party names are different, right? UK, it's Labour, Conservatives. Here, it's Democrat, Republican. You look at all of them; they're all essentially the same, right? Most of them are. Some have 3 parties, but most of them are 2-party systems. I could see where it starts amalgamating into that 1984 scenario, and you would have Western civilization.
the part you want to think about when you do this, when you go to 1984, there were no borders in the Americas.
No, there weren't.
You go up and down that lane. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. Well, no, there's a pretty strong border to the north. Canada don't let anybody in.
Yeah, but they're burning the whole place down, so I wouldn't worry about it.
No, they're not burning it. It's burning itself down.
Again, that's because our green energy people and the Greenpeace people, they took away fire breaks because that was not good.
Right.
So now they burn the whole place down. And the smoke now comes down into our country and takes out a third of our country with smoke that you can't breathe anymore. But that's our liberal, ultra-conservative socialists, ultra-socialists to the north.
You bring up a point, though. There's another topic that's a worldwide one. Green.
Oh, green energy or green energy.
However, they all call different things, but that's where, they're trying to drive this one mindset across every culture, country, all of that. China's like, F you, we're still building coal plants.
But that ties again back to the United States, because in every one of these agreements, who's the one country that's throwing millions and hundreds of $millions at the solution?
Yeah, meanwhile, we can't give our veterans good health care.
Can't take care of our own people. You're right.
Yeah,
we don't take care of our own.
We have I don't know how old she is now. How old's Greta now, Thunberg?
I have to ask her. Oh, the different Greta.
Not ours.
Okay.
The actress who's pretending she knows something about
She's
science.
going to throw something at me shortly.
She's what, probably 18, 19 now?
That's her
somewhere
balance.
in there.
Somewhere in that number.
And she's the world expert on climate change.
The problem was they called on the other day because 5 years ago she predicted the world would be over in 5 years.
Yeah, she got called. Well, that was a couple of months ago. They called her out for that. And of course, she was taking a sailing ship back to Europe to save on energy. Of course, they flew the person that sailed the ship back over on a plane. So, kind of defeated that. But
her answer was good because of all the steps that she was able to get. We've had to extend that time. That's the one thing when something doesn't happen on the far left, they can always say, "Well, we've taken enough steps to delay the inevitable," and that's we get credit for that.
You know what I like about the green people, the elites? Again, to circle back, they buy energy credits. They buy carbon credits. It's okay that we polluted on our private plane, John Kerry, that he doesn't own.
That's true.
He did not. He didn't lie. He did not own.
His wife owns
did,
it all.
But somehow magically the carbon disappears if you put enough money at it. That's just ludicrous. But again, it talks about how they, again, talking political parties and all that, they're trying to drive us into segments because division helps them.
Yep.
And they're using certain topics to do so. Green being the big one right now.
But if you don't break it into segments, then you're going to end up with nationalism. And nationalism is absolutely contrary to what they want to do. So we have to break
Defeats their
little
purpose.
pockets of people together and do away with this nationalist trade.
Let me ask you this. So we've looked back 100, 150 years. Where do you see us in 100, 150 forward with political parties and that kind of stuff?
I think by then our show might be the number one in the country.
Two corpses sitting here.
Reviewing how they got here.
That could be fun for Halloween. We get a couple skeletons and put them in the chair. We sit off air.
And we put mics in there and we talk.
Greta, make it happen. That could be fun, actually.
You can see the enthusiasm at
From her, but for us it would be a blast. What do you see? Do you think there is a one world? Do you think there's
I think
enough
we
of a
eventually
backlash?
get to... Well, first of all, it's going to depend on how quickly we come with alternative energy. Are we going to end up with being able to use magnetism, for example? You've got a reverse magnet that you can play with that. Is there some sort of sun we can work with? Atomic fusion, can we put together with that?
Wait a minute, hold on.
Solar.
Is there some sort of sun?
Solar, S-U-N. Solar.
I know that. I'm talking about, is there going to be more than one sun?
Well, there is more than one sun. There's one that's coming down that's going to take over the world
Some
again
of the things
soon.
you come down with. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So it all depends on how quickly our energy issues are solved. Because once that's solved, then we can start reaching out and traveling outside our own domain. And the other issue is the bigger we get as a world, we're at 8 billion people now, the last thing I heard. Sooner or later, we're going to run out of space.
We got a long way to go before that happens.
Maybe. You got to look at habitable space, not just the fact that you got a mountain that nobody's living on. We're not going to put a whole lot of people on Mount Everest.
You know where we live, right? you know that if you drive 20 miles in that direction, you have woods for
And in about 20
That's
years,
I get your point.
in about 20 years, what you're going to have down there,
There's one concrete jungle.
there you go.
Yeah.
Solve it. But
No, I get your point. I was just picking on you a little bit.
never.
Who, me? So population control. Where have I heard that one before, Bill?
You think? Let me think.
Wars? Did our vice president recently make a slip talking about
Oh,
population
yeah, that we need
control?
to lower the population of the world. I was suggesting that maybe she could be the first.
That wasn't very nice, Bill. FBI will be knocking at your door tomorrow.
Let me say now,
So you didn't answer my question yet. Where do you think we are in 150 years? Political parties, U.S., global.
unfortunately, within 100 years from now, and I'm not going to go 150, let's just go 100 years from now.
100 it is.
I think you're going to have some version of 1984 going on with three
Damn it,
major
we agree.
groups.
Damn it. You were supposed. I thought you'd have something. That was exactly what I was going to say.
You know, and you
I
know,
do. I believe the same thing.
and you're going to have three different groups of globalists running the operation to the best of their abilities because they all think they're important, but once they have to conflict with each other, they will fight each other using,
That's-
unfortunately, common men and women to do it.
Or does it become rollerball? Remember that movie? Where it was the corporations doing it.
Or better still, Logan's Run.
Or Logan's Run. You know, it's... You know, I actually was watching... Well, I was watching the newer Rollerball, which is awful. They destroyed that movie not too long ago. But don't watch it. You'd be better off watching Barbie.
At this stage, Rollerball is my deodorant.
But, you know...
I heard
the
that
premise
back there.
behind that was bad, Bill. The premise behind Rollerball is corporations were running the world. So whether it's Bill Gates or Microsoft, Bezos or Amazon, it's the same thing to me. My viewpoint is pretty much what you just said. I think you will see it eventually break down. I think countries will still be around, but it'll be like states are to the United States government.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you.
It'll be the North American country with 3 different states or whatever.
European
European
Africa.
It's almost like they're going to have something called the European Union.
Well, I think it'll extend into Africa will become the battleground.
Where? Europe? Or Africa?
Europe and Asia fighting over Africa and the subcontinent.
I can't disagree with that.
And then you're going to have a battle over the Pacific, and between with the aversion of the Chinese government over there and the battle for the Pacific with us going on, and it'll go back and forth. But I don't see it getting any better than 100 years.
Do you think? Well, how much time do we have, producer? Before we
1 minute.
1 minute. You know what? Let's throw it to break now and come back. I have a thought I want to talk about.
The fact that he has a thought is worth pointing. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Reclaiming America. We're about to hear Dan's new thoughts, so stay tuned for this.
So we're talking about energy being like a driver for this. I got another one to throw out because we were kind of talking about where the fighting will be and all that. Water,
That's a big
clean
issue.
water.
Natural resources are always a reason for battlegrounds.
So you look at where is the most clean water right now? It's not entirely clean. North America. For the
Well,
most part.
they're one of the few places where water runs 24/7
Yeah.
and it doesn't dry up for half a season.
Well, the other side of it is even in North America, it's basically the Mississippi East has water. The Mississippi West doesn't. I think you're going to see a lot of political upheaval coming in the next 100 years over water.
You're also going to see that same issue over other natural resources. If for example, if Mr. Beachman, who sits on the ocean and
You just can't let that vision go, can you?
no, I cannot. Who sits there just dreaming up new ways to screw the country?
He doesn't dream up. He's trying to dream up what his oatmeal was this morning.
The more we cut and we don't use our own natural resources, there's a reality. All wars are fought over natural resources, be it people, natural, whatever you got. So we dry up all the rest of the oil in the world and all the gas in the world, and there's only one place left with it. They're coming. And you ain't stopping them. They're coming to get it.
Or you could look at it a different way.
Yes, sir.
He's a Democrat, right? Democrat being Democrat, take from everybody else to make ourselves better. But
Well-
make them believe you're doing it for their benefit.
That's an interesting philosophy. It's kind of describes them well.
Here, we'll take all your natural resources,
And we'll pay you for them.
but we're going to make sure that we throw money at you so you think it's for your benefit. You know, all those greenbacks they're getting ain't going to do much good when they got no water to
And
drink.
then when nobody's got water and nobody's got gasoline or
Liquor or
nobody has
whatever.
enough gas, they're coming and knocking. And they're coming with their machine guns and their tanks and their planes, and they're going to take it.
And that's pretty much what I would venture to say every war in one way or another has been fought for entire of human
For
history.
natural resource, including people being a natural resource.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, you know, again, we're talking about different things like parties and all that. I just feel like 1984 is going to come true. You stole my thunder on that. I do think that even within the United States right now, the parties are not really that much different. The parties, I'm not talking about the people in them. You know, the politicians are basically right.
The career politicians
They're in
don't have a
lockstep
lot
with
of
each other.
difference
It's a
between each other.
uniparty there. The people are not. And that uniparty in Washington is trying to create division amongst us. And it's going worldwide. You see this same in the UK. It's exactly the same. You see it in Australia.
France is starting with this.
France is the outlier to me, though. Because France, the people are rising up. The French Revolution is, I think it's coming again. If I were Macron, I'd be a little careful right now.
The one that I think fascinating in Europe is the battle over the Tatars.
What?
Haven't you seen the videos of all the women arguing for the right to walk around topless?
In Europe?
Yes, sir.
They've had that right.
No, they're battling national. There's demonstrations after demonstrations over this lately.
Somehow it's a non-issue for me. I don't care one way or the other. Apparently it's a big issue for you.
No, it's just something to.
Have you looked into it in depth, Bill?
No, because
make sure you
it's
see enough
something I
video?
can't get my hands on right now to figure out what to do
You
about
better
it.
dig yourself out of this hole in case the wife is watching it. You know, I don't know where to go from there.
I got you.
Oh, you got me. Really? Tatas in Europe. That's where
I'm going
you
to
went.
send you the video.
No, you're not. Thank you very much.
And actually,
It'll actually now show up on my phone because I'm sure it's listening in.
he would like an extended version.
You know, it's again, just having fun speculating where we'll be. I think there is going to be some sort of a revolution, if you will. Whether it happens and it's touched off by, you know, I say a China-U.S. war, or whether it becomes the elites versus the norms,
The common folk.
common folk. That's the one I actually believe is going to happen. I think that because if you look at both sides, left and right, and I'm not talking the extremists, but both sides don't like the elites.
No, I agree.
You know,
But what's scary is you start looking at what they're doing with robotics. The elites don't need to
there's a
send.
reason they want. Yeah,
They don't need to fight. They can
not
just
wrong.
create these. And the other scary part of it, they're building machines that can fix themselves, build themselves, and think for themselves. The elites may put us all out of business.
So we got 1984 coming true. Mm-hmm. We got Logan's Run, Rollerball, and now
the Terminator.
Terminator. Skynet is coming.
Just hang in there, people. You're going to love the rest of the next century or two.
I mean, thank God we won't be around for a lot of it, right? Although I worry about like my grandchildren.
You know, and you've actually got, speaking on that, you actually have countries that have started in taking human brain cells and putting them into AI.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked before about what AI can now interchange with you and do, and have a conversation and actually parrot anything you're doing and probably do it better.
I can give you a bit of hope. So I forget
Never
what
met
the
her.
problem was, but they had AI work on it about a year ago, and AI had like a 98% success rate on it. It has learned so well, it's now failing at a 98% rate. It's become human, basically.
Well,
I forget. I'll have to find out exactly what it was.
was that solving pi?
It was no. It was some. I think it was a math problem. that they were trying. So AI could get it right 98% of the time, and now it's like 2% of the time. It's almost an inverse because it learned.
You learned
It
to
learned. Yeah, it's. It'll be interesting to see. Within the United States, I do think a third party will rise up. I think it's coming sooner rather than later. It could come as soon as next year. It depends if whatever happens with Trump and some reason he's not the Republican Party nominee. I don't see that happening. But if he's not, you think he's going away? No, he's going to run third party.
Oh, he'll do the no label party.
Kennedy has all but said, he won't say outright, but you read between the lines, he'll do it.
And you heard today Joe Manchin has announced that he's seriously considering going independent because he cannot work with the Democratic leadership at this. Did I hear a?
I heard. You better get your microphone going there, Greta.
Yeah, you jump right in here.
I do think the time will come. You'll see a third party in the U.S.
Well, now the question is, we've had third parties for the last 250 years. They eventually grow up and take the place of another party, and we end up with a two-party system.
Yeah, but you also look at places like Germany, Sweden, UK. They do have more than two parties.
Yeah, but they have a different system of government because you
They
have
do.
to put
Fair
together a majority
Coalition,
group,
they call it.
coalition, and if you can't get it, and as soon as they pull out and say we don't want to support it anymore, you have to have elections again. We're not there.
We're not there, but I could see where we get there. I could see it.
That'll be changing the Constitution.
It would be, but I think there's a lot of people out there, both left and right, that know we have more in common than not. And I do think that group will rise up. The silent majority. I think it's coming. You're hearing so much out there about it that we're at the very initial stages right now. I think it could explode. What if somebody like Elon Musk says, "I'm backing you, Kennedy"? Kind of like Soros does with Democrats.
What if someone like Elon Musk says I want to be president?
He can't. He's not an American citizen. Born in America.
We'll get the COS together and take care of that.
It could be. I would not have a problem with Elon being president. There's things I don't agree with on him, but
He's at least a fair person.
I think in general he's an honest person too.
Yeah.
He makes no bones. I'm proud to be rich, but I earned it. I don't have a problem with that. I don't. I have no problem. He works his tail off. He expects a lot from his employees. Some would say he's not fair to them. He's also paying them a lot of money.
And you got to earn what you're getting.
The reason I respect him is he doesn't make bones. Yeah, I'm rich. Deal with it. But I got SpaceX, Tesla, all the companies, He didn't get it handed to him. And I would argue, Bezos, before he lost his freaking mind, was along those lines. Money corrupted him. He started out in his garage selling books.
Taking off on a tangent, absolutely nothing to do with this, but as my
Oh, boy.
mind wanders around, and
There's a
in
scary
the great vast wasteland that we have today, it suddenly dawned on me that we have two nations in a space race to land on the moon.
Russia and
India.
Oh, is it? I was going to say Japan's also.
No, it's India.
India.
What's scary about it is, according to their calculations, it's going to take them weeks to get there. Now, I believe we did it in about 3 or 4 days each way, maybe.
Yeah, so the whole mission
I'm not
was
sure
like 10 days, right?
if they're in a windmill that's powering them to get there or what they got, but they're all supposed to be landing in a matter of, I think, sometime next month. And they're going to land, and they're supposed to be landing on the same day together, and one started ahead of the other. So it's just fascinating to listen to this. And we've announced now that since they're doing it,
Oh, we have to do it now.
we're going to do. We're just going to go past it, though.
We're going to Mars.
We didn't say that. We're just going to go past the moon.
Yeah. We're going to go round, visit it. But they're prepping for the Mars one, which Elon will do.
And I think he should.
Yeah, we might need that planet the way things are going here.
There's a reality that we're going to have to start colonizing sooner or later.
Well, the day will come when this solar system will not exist. We can move on planet Vulcan.
Oh.
Or the Klingons.
Peace be with you, my friend.
Did you see they're talking about the aliens too? We haven't talked about that at all.
Which aliens?
we're being have you not, Mr. Mainstream Media? We're being visited by aliens, Bill.
Have you not watched the History Channel?
No, I'm talking about for legitimate.
Have you not watched the History Channel?
Not recently, no.
They have nothing Monday to Friday but alien and
No,
visitation.
that's history. I'm talking about like the Biden administration putting out there.
You're going to believe the Biden.
Oh, I didn't say I believed it.
Now,
That's
there's a
distraction.
reality. Do
Yeah.
I believe they've been there? Do I believe they have a crash source someplace? Probably. You know,
What we got? That could be a show sometime.
I would love to do a discussion on the ancient
Do
astronauts
you
versus.
think there's life elsewhere? Yes,
Yes.
or no? I say it's an absolute certainty.
I absolutely agree with
It
you.
might be bacteria, but there is life elsewhere.
It may not be life as we know it. We are carbon based. It could be based on some other chemical.
Silica based.
It could be
is the big
anything.
one. Yeah, it's out. Wouldn't that be fascinating? That would change everything.
Yep.
So if for some reason aliens are found in the next 50 years, everything we just talked about goes out the window. That would unite mankind. And I'm not talking Independence Day where they're coming to take us over. I do think where it would,
You talking War of the Worlds?
not even that. I'm talking in a positive way. Like if it's found that there are Martians.
Maybe we'll go back to the Twilight Zone where they brought the book in called To Serve Man, and it was a cookbook.
Yeah. And we were the
Yeah,
we were the main course.
That's
if you
right.
will. Yeah.
That would make a show one time to have a discussion on: are there alien life out there? Is it advanced? Is it less advanced than we
I have
are?
a feeling we would agree on pretty much everything. But
Yeah, but we could even be an informative
what I
show.
find fascinating about that whole thing they've talked about over the last couple of months is apparently our F-22s are better than spacecraft that come from other galaxies. Somehow I think their technology is a little better than our... I mean, F-22 is a very nice fighter jet, but I don't think it's shooting down a spacecraft. I mean, that was like, what?
Well, there has been some talk out there speaking on this topic
Yep.
that the way we have grown in our technology growth, which is what every 2.5 years
it's a
we
loot.
double,
Yeah, it goes to...
has it in fact been traced back to some sort of
This could be... We got to save
spaceship?
this all for a whole show.
This could be a
'cause
whole
this could
show.
be
This could be a great show.
Yeah.
This could get us banned from 3 different countries.
No, I think this one's safe. I'm not sure.
I could
We'll find
fix
out.
that.
We talk about getting banned so much because someone gets us in trouble.
It's not me that said everything today.
What did I say?
I don't even want to say it. If I say it, I'm in trouble. Then I get banned.
Any final thoughts on political parties and the history thereof?
Yeah. A necessary evil.
A necessary evil. Oh, you have to expound on that.
We have
Really?
to have
Okay.
we have to have some way to elect leadership to run countries that or countries when local areas, whatever levels you want to talk to. So parties become a necessary evil. Unfortunately, what we have to face with is they have a sole purpose, which is to elect certain people to office, and they're not always out there for the best interests of the common people. And there are parties that we can say that don't do that.
See, the argument I was going to make was they are necessary, but not necessarily evil.
Well, you can name the German Socialist Party, for example, the Communist Party, for example. They're not necessarily good either.
But they would argue give me a right-wing party other than the Republicans. And then, I don't know, in Germany or wherever.
Well,
I'm sure they have
We
the
have no
equivalent.
right-wing parties.
Yeah, but I think United States being the classic example, it started out with the best of intentions, but when power comes in, absolute power corrupts,
And imperfect people make
Absolutely.
imperfect decisions at times.
but they think they're perfect. That's the problem.
Can't be two of us.
Modesty is your strength, you know that.
Quiet and humbleness, too.
I agree that parties are necessary. I would like to see more diversity in the sense of 2, 3, instead of 2, 3 or 4 parties of different legitimate. I know there's the Green Party and all those, but legitimate parties, because one thing I do think that would help is it might move things along, because Congress has basically done nothing for roughly 20 years, give or take, because they're at a stalemate.
Well, you got to remember, we live in a different world than when Congress was developed. I mean, when
A little bit.
when we ended up developing, and even our Constitution was written, that the legislative was the primary power broker. The executive branch was kind of the caretaker till the legislature came back in, and the Supreme Court was designed to just make sure there was battles are settled and no one breaks the rules.
Right.
So, but unfortunately, we've grown to the point with so much going on in the world, but so the world shrinking, for want of a better term, because
Yes, I
of
agree.
technology, because of transportation. We now need to change some of those ways the way we do things. What we really need to be working on, though, is returning power to the states and decentralizing
In the U.S.
in the United States.
I would argue worldwide.
Probably, that
You
would
know,
make
it's,
sense.
I'm trying to get myself. I'm getting out of just focusing on the U.S. because again, it goes back to my interactions with people from all over the world and having discussions with them.
The only danger with decentralizing is when you decentralize to a certain point, and then you got the biggest, baddest guy in the block coming in the street.
Fair point.
Like the Russians or the Chinese, and we now have 50 little independent states, rather than one. There's a danger there that we can get walked over. So
unless
where's
the-
the fine
unless
balance?
every
I couldn't
state
begin
is
to tell you.
equal within, if you're, let's say we're dividing it into the world, every state would have to have the same number of population and all that, which is never going to happen.
Well, there's going to be some states that are better off than others, and then there's going to be some states that don't deserve to be around, like California. And
Wow, you just cannot let it go.
I'm ready to let it go. There's no problem with letting
Let
it
me
go.
throw this out at you.
Yeah, I'm going
Just
to throw what out
we'll
at
go
me?
out in your little wasteland in your brain now. I'm just going to throw. We only had a couple
She
minutes.
says we don't have enough time for
We got
that.
a quick thing. Would you agree we shouldn't care about San Francisco anymore?
They don't care about
You
it.
and
Why
I.
should we?
Okay, I wanted to ask you that because you see all the time we got to worry about San Francisco's population and all that, and I'm like, why? They voted for it. Let them have it.
What you're going to see more and more is states that have gone in that direction where they've become liberal. They can't afford to do what they're doing, and they're going to expect the rest of us to kick in and support what we don't support to
That's
begin
where
with.
we need to give them the single finger salute. Notice how
Read
I did
between the
that?
lines.
Yes.
And actually, for those that don't deserve the best.
Again, it goes to the political parties again and how it all interoperates and all that. It's just, we could spend hours upon hours on this. It's,
But if you look back, just take what we talked about in the 1890s with the Republicans walking away from their base, and they did.
they did.
The Democrats are doing the same thing.
They've already done it.
Yeah,
and
they're
you're
they're
seeing-
walking away from the
Yep.
common people, and they're grabbing the extremes out there, and sooner or later that's not going to work.
And if you look at history over the millennia, that happens over and over and over again.
I agree.
The one constant about all of politics is that there is no consistency. It changes.
The only constant is change.
I was going to say, it changes constantly.
Okay.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it leads to bad things when that happens. Would you agree?
I agree with you 100%. And with that, we're going to close down the show
Do you
for
like
this.
how I did that to give us a closeout?
And with agreement on the same thing, which is different.
I worked on that.
So you did very well with that. So anyway, we're going to shut down this episode and look forward to talking to you again later in September and next week as we go along. Anyway, this is Bill, and Dan's going to tell you where to find us.
He does this. Why don't you ever tell him? Because you don't know, do you?
TikTok. Go ahead.
That's
You're
one.
right.
Give another one.
Spotify.
2. Keep going.
YouTube. Oh, I was going to say YouTube. That was
YouTube
my
3.
name.
Go.
That's it.
Nope.
That's it.
Nope.
On my list.
X.
Oh, Twitter, the
There you
X-Strategy
go. There you
group.
go. See, you do know them.
Yeah,
Well
but
done,
you
my
do it
friend.
much
Well
better
done.
than I.
Huh? That's because
And
I'm the one that's got to post them
remember
everywhere.
our goal, if we can get 100,000 people watching, you're now going to get two things.
I thought it was
We're going to
10,000.
get, we're pushing this up. 10,000, we get Miss Greta to come on this side with us, and you'll get to see what we are fortunate enough to see on a regular basis. And secondly, at 100,000, Dan and I promise to do the entire show in Speedos. Anyway, we'll see.
I was going to say like and share, but after that, no one is. So, and you ain't subscribing after that. Well done to drive them away. On that note, let's call it a day. Like, subscribe, share, all that stuff.
And we'll see you again. Thank you.
Have a good one.